My name is Elaine Porter, and I am 66 years old. For most of my life, I taught elementary school in our little town in Ohio, guiding children through spelling tests and storybooks. I thought retirement would be quieter, just me, my grandson Ethan, and the creaks of this old house. But the night my son dragged his suitcase across the upstairs floor, I realized peace was something I might never have again. The thud was sharp, echoing through the walls like a warning bell. I froze with Ethan's school shirt still warm from the iron in my hands. My legs carried me up the stairs before my mind had fully caught up. At the top, I found my son Brian hunched over stuffing clothes into a worn black bag as if a fire was consuming the room. No folding, no hesitation, just panic and purpose. "Where are you going?" My voice cracked, though I tried to sound steady. "Business trip." Last minute, he muttered his back to me. It was a lie, plain as day. Brian worked IT support for a local shop. They didn't send him anywhere. I wanted to believe he was stressed, maybe overwhelmed by bills or grief that never quite left him after Ethan's mother passed. But then he stepped over the shattered frame of her photo on the floor as if it were nothing more than trash. The glass glittered under his shoes, and something in my chest broke with it. "What about your son?" I whispered, my throat tight. "He's better off with you." "He always has been," Brian said, zipping the bag with finality. His eyes were hollow, his jaw set like a man severing ties instead of packing for a trip. When he walked out the door, the autumn air rushed into our home cold and sharp, and silence filled the space he left behind. I looked at Ethan across the living room. He closed his math book with careful precision, met my eyes, and spoke words no child should carry with such calm certainty. "Grandma, don't worry, I'll handle this." I didn't understand then what he meant, but that single sentence would become the beginning of everything. That first night without Brian in the house, the walls seemed to breathe differently. I lay awake in my bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to every creak of the floorboards. The quiet should have comforted me, but it pressed down like a heavy blanket I couldn't push away. Somewhere in that stillness, I heard the soft, rhythmic clicking of keys drifting down the hallway. At first, I thought Ethan was playing a game to distract himself. I padded to his room in my robe, careful not to startle him, but when I pushed the door open, what I found wasn't a boy lost in distraction. He sat at his desk, shoulders squared, his face lit by the glow of his laptop. Sheets of paper covered every corner of the desk, scrawled with numbers, account balances, and scribbled notes. "Sweetheart, it's after midnight," I said gently. I know Ethan replied without looking up. His voice was calm, too calm for a 13-year-old who had just watched his father walk away. "But I need to see how bad it is." "How bad what is?" I asked, moving closer. He slid a printed bank statement toward me. My name was on the top, but the number at the bottom turned my stomach to ice. $12. $12 left from 30 years of saving the pension I thought would carry us. "This isn't possible," I whispered. "It's real." Ethan said, his eyes steady on mine. "Dad's been draining everything. For months." My hands trembled as I picked up another sheet. It was his college fund, the account I swore to protect for him. The balance was zero, all that money gone like it had never existed. Before I could catch my breath, Ethan turned his laptop toward me. "And that's not even the worst part," he said. The screen showed his father's emails, and beside them, a name I'd never seen before, but would come to know too well: Samantha Vega. The name glared at me from the screen as though it carried its own shadow. "Who is she?" I asked, my voice barely more than a whisper. Ethan leaned back in his chair, the seriousness in his young face startling me. "Her name is Samantha Vega. She works at a financial firm in Columbus. She's not just Dad's girlfriend, Grandma. She's the one helping him move the money." I shook my head, my chest aching as though each word he spoke was a blow. "How could you possibly know that?" He tapped the keyboard, pulling up a thread of emails that made my throat tighten. There were messages about setting up new accounts, about transferring balances into places I had never even heard of. Samantha's replies were professional at times, affectionate at others, filled with little promises about their future together. He used your social security number, Ethan said, pointing to one document. Took out a personal loan in your name 3 weeks ago. And this. He clicked again, opening another file. This is my information. He used mine to apply for a credit card. Said I was 25. I felt my knees give way and lowered myself into the chair beside him. The betrayal hit harder than the numbers on the page. My son hadn't just stolen money. He had stolen identities, mine and his own child's. Why would he do this, I asked, but it was more to myself than to Ethan, because he thinks he can get away with it. Ethan answered, his voice steady, too steady, but he's wrong. I stared at my grandson, this boy who still should have been worrying about science projects and baseball games, not financial crimes. There was a glint in his eyes, something both sharp and unsettling. What do you mean? I asked cautiously. Ethan clicked a folder labeled Evidence and turned the screen toward me. I've been documenting everything. And Grandma, I'm not going to let them win. Ethan rifled through another stack of printouts, each page more damning than the last. It's not just about us. Grandma, he said, pushing a document across the desk. I leaned closer, my heart thudding as I scanned the lines. It was a police report, Samantha Vega's name stamped across the top. Embezzlement. I read aloud, my voice breaking. Unauthorized access. Falsified investment statements. She was investigated at her old job in Toledo. Ethan explained, his tone flat, like he had rehearsed this truth to himself before telling me. Charges were dropped when she paid restitution and quietly left the company. She came here and started again, only no one checked her background. My skin prickled. This woman wasn't just reckless, she was practiced. She had slipped from one city to another like a snake, shedding skin, carrying the same poison wherever she went. And Dad knew. The question escaped me before I could hold it back. Ethan nodded. He's been helping her. He created fake digital trails to make the stolen money look like stock losses. He even set up dummy accounts to convince clients their investments were safe while she drained them. I pressed a hand to my mouth, nausea rising. My son hadn't just betrayed me. He had chosen to be her accomplice. The boy I raised, the man who once kissed his wife's picture goodnight, was now exploiting strangers, robbing the elderly of their savings. My eyes blurred with tears as I stared at the papers. How many? I asked quietly. Ethan hesitated, then answered, at least 17 people, close to $500,000. The room seemed to tilt. For a moment, I gripped the edge of the desk just to steady myself. I wanted to scream, to collapse, to deny what I had heard. Instead, I whispered the only truth I could cling to. My son is a criminal. Ethan's gaze was firm, unflinching. And criminals face consequences. Grandma, that's where we start. The next evening, I found Ethan in the kitchen with his laptop open beside his untouched dinner. His fingers moved across the keys with a speed and certainty that unnerved me. What are you doing? I asked, lowering myself into the chair opposite him. Filing reports, he answered simply. His voice carried the weight of someone far older than 13. Fraud alerts with the banks, identity theft complaints with the Consumer Protection Bureau, and he added a flicker of determination crossing his young face, a very detailed email to Samantha's employer. I pressed my palms together, my chest tightening. Ethan, this could get you into trouble. He finally looked up at me, his brown eyes steady. Grandma, we're already in trouble. If I don't act now, they'll keep stealing from us and from everyone else. Before I could protest again, a new email notification chimed. Ethan scanned it quickly, then allowed himself the smallest of smiles. She's been suspended. Pending investigation. My breath caught. So fast I sent them everything he explained. Copies of transfers, screenshots of her messages with Dad, even the fake account statements she made. They couldn't ignore it. I sat back in my chair, stunned. While I had spent nights praying for a miracle, Ethan had built one with nothing but his mind and his courage. Yet pride tangled with fear inside me. He was still a boy. What if this path swallowed him whole? Sweetheart, you shouldn't have to carry this alone, I whispered. He reached across the table and covered my hand with his. I'm not carrying it alone, Grandma. I'm doing it for us. For you. For everyone they hurt. The conviction in his tone left no space for argument. In that moment, I realized Ethan wasn't waiting for someone else to save us. He had already decided to fight. 2 days later, I came downstairs to find the dining table buried in papers. Ethan had spread them out in careful rows, names, numbers, bank statements, investment summaries that looked foreign to me, but frighteningly familiar to him. "What is all this?" I asked, clutching the doorway. He didn't look up as he spoke. "Other people. Clients Samantha and Dad stole from." The words dropped like stones into the room. I walked closer, scanning the documents. Mrs. Frances Miller, age 82, missing $30,000 from her pension account. Mr. Richard Hayes, 74, half his life savings gone. Line after line, name after name. "These people don't even know yet," Ethan said, finally raising his eyes to mine. His expression was fierce, but behind it I saw the weight he was carrying. Samantha's been sending fake statements to some of them. They think their accounts are growing when really she's draining them. My chest tightened. The betrayal wasn't just ours. It was shared, multiplied across families who had trusted, who had believed. "What are you planning to do?" My voice trembled half with fear, half with awe. He slid a folder toward me. Inside were letters carefully drafted with evidence attached. "I'm going to send anonymous packages, step-by-step instructions on how to report the fraud, where to go for legal help. They'll know the truth, Grandma. They'll have a chance to fight back." I touched the papers, my hands shaking. It was organized, meticulous, like something prepared by an adult investigator, not a boy who still had spelling tests in his backpack. "Ethan, this is so much responsibility for someone your age." His jaw set in quiet defiance. "Age doesn't matter when people are losing everything. Someone has to stop her. If Dad won't, then I will." I stared at him across the table, pride and fear colliding inside me. He wasn't just protecting us anymore. He was protecting strangers. And in that moment, I realized Ethan had chosen a battlefield much bigger than our home. 3 nights later, the phone rang just as I was sorting through bills at the kitchen table. I almost didn't answer when I saw the name flash across the caller ID, Brian. My chest tightened, my fingers trembling as I lifted the receiver. "Mom," his voice rushed through the line, ragged and desperate. "We need to talk. Everything's falling apart." I gripped the edge of the table. "Where are you? A motel outside of town," he said quickly. "Samantha and I, things are bad. My accounts are frozen. The police showed up asking questions and she just got fired. Someone's targeting us. They know everything, emails, bank transfers, even phone calls. Mom, it's like someone's hunting us." I closed my eyes, the irony cutting deep. The hunter he feared was sitting upstairs in his room, probably typing with steady fingers, headphones on. "Brian," I said slowly, "maybe this isn't someone targeting you. Maybe it's just consequences catching up. This isn't funny," he snapped, his voice breaking. "Our car got repossessed yesterday. The apartment in Jacksonville fell through after the landlord got some kind of anonymous warning. Whoever this is, they want to destroy us. Mom, please, I need help. I need money to get out of town." My pulse quickened, a storm of anger and sorrow colliding in my chest. "Help," I whispered. "You stole Ethan's college fund. You drained every dollar I saved. You even used our names to take out loans. That's not borrowing, Brian. That's fraud." Silence stretched across the line, heavy and suffocating. When he spoke again, his voice cracked like a child's. "I know I messed up, but I never meant for it to go this far. Mom, I'm your son." Doesn't that still count for something? I stared at the bills scattered before me, each one proof of what he had done, and wondered if love alone could survive a betrayal this deep. Brian's breathing grew ragged on the line, each word tumbling faster than the last. "Mom, I can fix this if you just send me something cash, anything. Please, I just need time." From upstairs came the faint tapping of keys. Ethan was in his room working the way he had every night since his father left. A moment later, he appeared in the doorway, laptop in hand, eyes sharp. He didn't speak, just held the screen up for me to see. The headline glowed in bold letters, "Local Financial Advisor Arrested in Embezzlement Scheme." Samantha's picture stared back at me, her smile replaced by a mugshot. My breath caught. I pressed the phone closer to my ear. "Brian, you might want to turn on the news." "What?" His voice cracked. "Your girlfriend was arrested this morning." The sound that came next was somewhere between a sob and a scream. No, she was right here an hour ago. We were planning our next move." "That's impossible." "Where is here Brian?" I asked carefully. "The Sunset Motel Route 9 room." 12, he blurted out before catching himself. His voice shook with panic. "Mom, if they've taken her, they're coming for me next. I need help." "Please don't let them." The line erupted with background noise pounding on a door, firm voices shouting commands. "Police, open up." Mom Brian's voice dissolved into chaos. I heard the clatter of the phone dropping, men shouting rights, the metallic snap of handcuffs. Then clear as a bell through the static, Brian Porter, "You are under arrest for identity theft, wire fraud, and conspiracy to commit embezzlement." Silence followed, heavy and absolute. I sat frozen, receiver pressed against my ear, though the line had already gone dead. Across the room, Ethan closed his laptop with a quiet finality. "It's over," he said, his voice calm. Then after a pause, "At least this part." The news spread quickly. By morning, the local stations carried Samantha's arrest across every channel, her face a constant reminder of the deceit that had poisoned our lives. By afternoon, Brian's name joined hers in scrolling headlines: "Father and financial associate charged in multi-million-dollar fraud." Neighbors whispered over fences, church friends left awkward voicemails, and still I moved through the house in a haze. My son, my only child, was sitting in a cell waiting for a court date that would define his future. I wanted to weep for the boy I had raised, for the father Ethan once adored. But every time the tears threatened, I thought of empty accounts, forged signatures, and the cold sound of his voice telling me Ethan was better off without him. Love and grief wrestled inside me, neither winning, both leaving me hollow. Ethan, meanwhile, carried himself with a steadiness that unsettled me. That evening, he joined me at the kitchen table, sliding a mug of tea toward me as though he were the adult, and I the child. "We're not victims anymore, Grandma," he said, meeting my gaze with quiet resolve. "We're survivors." His words sank deep, wrapping around my heart with a mix of pride and sorrow. My grandson had lost his father in the most brutal way imaginable, yet here he sat, strong and unflinching. "You shouldn't have to be this grown-up," I whispered. He offered a small smile, the kind that made him look 13 again. "Maybe, but I am. And now we get to decide what comes next." In the silence that followed, I realized something had shifted. Brian's arrest closed one chapter, but Ethan was already opening another. He wasn't just determined to protect me anymore, he was determined to protect anyone who had been hurt. 6 months later, an envelope arrived from the district attorney's office. My hands trembled as I slid it open, half afraid it might contain another cruel surprise. Instead, a check slid onto the table: restitution from Samantha's seized assets, $18,400. It wasn't everything Brian had taken, not nearly, but it was something. Enough to start again, enough to put back a seed for Ethan's college fund. When I told him, Ethan's face lit with satisfaction. "It means the system is working, Grandma. Not just for us, for the others, too." He showed me a folder on his laptop. Inside were updates. Mrs. Miller recovered $22,000. Mr. Hayes regained his full amount. 17 families in total, each beginning to reclaim a fraction of what was stolen. I studied Ethan's expression as he spoke, noticing how his features had sharpened in those months, how his voice carried a confidence that hadn't been there before. He wasn't just proud of what he'd accomplished, he was determined to keep going. "I've been helping some of them file reports," he admitted. "I talked with a legal aid group downtown. They're showing me how to do things the right way, how to make sure everything is official." "You've done enough, sweetheart," I said softly. "You've already given back more than anyone could have asked." But he shook his head. It's not about enough. It's about making sure people like Samantha never get another chance. For the first time in a long while, I felt something bloom inside me, not just relief, but hope. Out of betrayal, Ethan had carved a purpose. As I folded the letter and placed the check carefully in my wallet, I realized the future didn't feel quite so uncertain anymore. It felt like a path narrow but steady, and Ethan was already walking it. We moved into a smaller house on the quieter side of town. It didn't have the grand staircase or the old Victorian charm, but it had sunlight in the mornings and a yard just big enough for Ethan to mow on weekends. It felt like home, in a way the old place never had, because this one wasn't filled with ghosts. I took a part-time job as a substitute teacher, not because we were desperate for the money anymore, but because I missed the laughter of classrooms, the smell of chalk and crayons, the rhythm of guiding children through their lessons. Ethan teased me about it, but I could see in his eyes that he liked knowing I was busy with something that made me smile again. He grew taller in those months, his voice deeper, his shoulders stronger. Yet he was still the boy who set 2 plates on the table at dinner, who kissed my cheek before heading upstairs to finish his homework. Only now, between assignments, he also helped families learn how to protect themselves, working with community centers and local law offices. He had turned our tragedy into something bigger than survival. He had turned it into service. One afternoon, the phone rang. The caller ID read Springfield Correctional Facility, Brian. I stared at the flashing letters, the sound of his last desperate plea echoing in my memory. The phone rang 6 times before sliding to voicemail. When it rang again 2 minutes later, I pressed the button and turned the phone off. Some bridges once burned don't get rebuilt. Some forgiveness has to be earned, not begged for. Upstairs, I heard Ethan's voice through his door, calm and steady as he spoke to another family, walking them through how to document financial abuse. I sat at the kitchen table, letting his words drift down like a promise. Real family protects each other. Real family doesn't abandon. And sometimes it takes the youngest among us to remind the rest what love and justice truly mean. Thank you for watching. If you enjoy these family drama and revenge stories, please subscribe and join me for more every day.